So welcome everyone. Thank you for your patience. We are having a little bit of technical difficulty, but maybe I can just start. So I was really excited to be moderating this panel because there was a lot of correction that was happening last year in cannabis. And, you know, for this panel, I get to sit with two leaders who have really implemented successful strategies and helping their companies succeed. So we have Chris Melillo, sorry, from Ascend Wellness. Ascend is one of the largest privately held multi-state operators in the world. You're going to hear the term MSO, multi-state operator. I believe you guys are in Illinois, Michigan, Massachusetts, New Jersey, and Ohio. And then before Ascend, you were with Curaleaf. And when you left, I believe Curaleaf was and probably is still the biggest cannabis company in the world, operating in 18 states. Pretty amazing, pretty impressive. And I had a chance to talk with you yesterday and get to know a little bit more background, which I think is fascinating. So I'd love to hear your, experience and how you got into the
appreciate it. Thank you. And great spending time with you yesterday. We both have paths back to Oregon, which is odd, but cool. So I've got a long history in running retail. It's been my entire career. It was a summer job gone wild, basically. But how I got into cannabis specifically, I was living out in Portland, Oregon. I was working for Nike at the time. I was running retail for North America. And the day I was basically packing up to leave New York to head out to Oregon, I got the call and mom had lung cancer and pretty advanced and pretty severe. So I pack up the truck, torn heart, take me and my wife and 3 kids out to Oregon, drop a New Yorker in the middle of Oregon. It was like the funniest thing ever. It was like a sitcom waiting to happen. And working for Nike. But what I realized is Oregon was going adult use right around me as it had happened. What dawned on me is my business mind said, wow, all these locations are popping up, but they're highly inconsistent and they could use somebody with my skill sets. I've been doing retail forever, merchandising, store design, construction, look, feel, and operational standards. So my business mind went there first, but then what ended up happening is emotionally, I realized mom was suffering. And after she had passed a year later, I realized I definitely could have helped her quality of life through cannabis, through the plant. And I missed an opportunity. I missed an opportunity to just soften the landing, so to speak, really drive the quality of her last few years of life. So I started looking while I was in Oregon. I was still with Nike. I knew there was some transition happening there, and I did love the space. And I loved it for a lot of reasons. First and foremost is I had a personal connection to it. I watched where I could have had helped. And I also realized that I missed that opportunity and I wasn't going to miss it again. So fast forward a couple of years, I get a phone call from Joe Lusardi, CEO of Curaleaf. And he said, Chris, I woke up this morning and I'm a retail company and I don't know anything about retail. Very true story, very funny. And that's how I joined on with Curaleaf. And I think started with them 2+ years ago. Been with Ascend now for going on 5-6 months. So I'm about 2.5+ years in cannabis, and I wouldn't change a thing. It's been the best career move of my life.
And before this, you were talking about your other retail experience: Home Depot, PetSmart, Equinox, Nike, yep. Curaleaf, Ascend. That's amazing. Can you tell us a little bit about what is the secret sauce? You've helped build all of those companies and expand. What has been the factors that have made all of those companies, or that you've helped make all of those companies successful?
Thank you for making me feel old. That's awesome. No, I'm a kid at heart. I keep it light. I don't ride the highs. I don't get low. It's work and it's fun, and I love to work. Maybe my wife would probably say a little bit of a workaholic. But that said, it's always the people. 100% of the time, it's always the team that you surround yourself with and the team that you sign up with. So I've been super selective about my resume and the companies that you want to work for and you target. I've also been more selective about the team that I build. And I think in building my retail career, I tell this story a lot, and many people have heard it. You can take one single retail location, not change a single product in the entire location, That location may be underperforming by 10%. You change out one leader, that leader that's not driving that team or owning that team or making the right team decisions. You change out that one leader. That same store with the same inventory goes from a -10 to a +2. It's always the people. It's never the product. And that's really hard to say when you're talking about very limited sneakers at Nike, or it's really hard to say when you're selling cannabis, which has been illegal for a lifetime, and now it's essential, and people line up to buy cannabis. So at the end of the day, surrounding yourself with an amazing team has always been my calling card. It aligns me with companies that I want to work for and work with, and it's never going to change. It's going to be my recipe for success as we continue to move forward.
Amazing. Hey, Kyle, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Good to have you here. So everyone, I want to introduce Kyle Kazan, Chairman and CEO of Glasshouse, one of the largest privately held, vertically integrated cannabis and hemp companies in the world, operating out of as a single operator in the largest cannabis market, which is California. Hey, Kyle, welcome. Just would love to, you also have a very interesting story coming out of actually being a sheriff and into the cannabis space. I would love for you to share with our audience your cannabis story.
Yeah, so thank you. Wasn't sheriff, was a police officer, and it's not really a subtle difference if you're getting pulled over or arrested, but it is if you're on the other side of it. Yeah, I was a basketball player until I was through college. Didn't know what I wanted to do, and got into teaching, and then I became a police officer. And at the same time, I was investing in real estate and was building companies on the side. And ultimately, after spending 5 years in law enforcement, pretty heavily focusing on gangs and the war on drugs, get really disenchanted and roll the clock forward after 99 when I left to about 2008. I started speaking out heavily against the war on drugs on CNN, Fox, and then the legalization of marijuana movement really took hold here in California as Prop 19. And so I was a very vocal, trying to counter that law enforcement strong on crime. And I started getting contacted about investing, since that's, my other companies do. And, at first, no, because I would have dragged down anybody, because a lot of the law enforcement out there hated me. They felt I was pretty much a heretic. But at the end of the day, I met a lot of good people and, entered into the space in 2015, 2016.
That's amazing. Loved learning more about your backgrounds. And I just asked Chris, what was his secret sauce for having success in all of your endeavors? I'm going to turn that question to you as well.
So, so my other companies are pretty good size, have a lot of team members. And I would tell you, if I have any good skill that's consistently helped me, is finding good people and then aligning our interests and keeping them aligned. And really and truly, any business is people. If you read the book Steve Jobs, and he talks about the iPhone, it came down to harnessing a team of people and talented and working together and just rowing and rowing and rowing in the same direction. And so it's the power of people.
It's interesting that both of you say it's all about the people. For folks that are here looking to get into the cannabis space, what are the traits that you think are going to be the most important for them entering into cannabis?
Yeah. Being in cannabis for a couple of years now, I've seen really, really successful people in prior lives not have success in cannabis, and I've seen both ways. I've come down to most recently some of the traits that are super important to being successful in cannabis, and I think you have to have high motor. There's not many times in the world of business where you're starting an industry and a company at the same time. Most of these companies are in 1.0, 2.0, maybe 3 or 4.0 versions of themselves with a long way to go. So you're starting company and industry at the same time. Your ability to pivot quickly is probably the most important. You can have the best laid plan and regulatory body makes a decision and you have to change that plan instantly. So the ability to have a plan and adapt quickly and be okay with adapting. Progress over perfection, I think, is important in cannabis in this stage right now. And high motor. You have to be able to work. You're doing, and again, in a vertically integrated, you're growing 24/7. You are cultivating constantly. You're manufacturing products constantly. You got supply chain, and then ultimately retail and having a service journey for customers. So there's no sleep. It is not the industry for the weary or for the 9 to 5. I'm going to take weekends and nights off, and it just isn't that right now. So I try and scare people coming into the industry and tell them this is not for the faint of heart. You are going to put in some significant time in your life work balance. But at the end of the day, the success and the to me, it's competitive. I just want to continue to improve the business and improve and improve. So for me, that's what kind of motivates me. You got to find those types of personalities. Now, again, there's all periphery personalities. Like if you're doing in a more medical market, you're finding compassion and caregivers and people of that nature. But push comes to shove, it all comes down to you building an industry and a company at the same time.
What about you, Kyle?
I would say to Chris, I would agree with what Chris is saying. And I would say that any business that you enter into, when you're an entrepreneur, you just better climb over hurdles, go around hurdles. And, you have 24 hours a day. You got to use as many as you can. Cannabis, particularly, you go back a few years, and I'm sure we're talking to people like yourself that know, where in the real estate side, where I built a very large company, access to banking, loans, investors, institutions. I mean, it was like no problem. There weren't all kinds of permitting hurdles. Everything in cannabis, now we're able to bank. Now there's, at least we've been lucky enough to get over that hurdle. But it's hard, and you're trying to recruit good people that are very successful and go, oh, by the way, you're a federal felon day one. How does that work? Is that okay? Because I had some people lined up and they just couldn't. And I said, look, you've got to do some soul searching. I don't think, it's something I got over, but you may not. And there's a lot of people, over now, more people are coming in. But for a while, there are people that weren't willing to come in. So I agree with Chris that, to be successful in business, you just have to keep going no matter what. And cannabis has additional challenges that you just have to get through.
Yeah, it's the highest of the highs and the lowest of the lows. So it is definitely, we should make it one. And, for folks that have, are new and, new states coming online, new licensees, can you share some stories about, how things have kind of changed or were unexpected as licensee holders? Maybe some things that they should be looking out for that have, hard lessons that you guys have learned.
If I jump in on that one first, I would tell you everything is local. Most businesses are local, but when it comes to this business, if you said, hey, I want to go out there and open up a dispensary, win a dispensary license, that's probably the entry point for most people. You have to go know that city. You have to know not only the business side, the demographics, how many licenses surround you, and start doing some mathematics. But the other thing is, if you say, hey, I'm going to go to Fullerton, California, and I'm going to go there because I live in Orange County, you're going to have to understand the politics. You're going to have to understand, and you're going to have to do a little bit of cash outlay. So, and then if you win a license, if you don't have a retail background, then you got to figure out, okay, how do I do that? You go up against Chris for the company he's working with now, the company he worked with before. They've got seasoned professionals. They win a license down the street from you. You're going to be competing with real retail. The head of our retail spent the last 20 years at Anthropologie and Nordstrom. So it's one of those things where, you just have to fully understand what you're getting into and be dogged that you can be successful, but understand what your competition looks like.
Yeah. I totally agree with what Kyle said. And I also believe that this market doesn't have competition yet. I truly believe we're partners. We're all providing a product that is woefully underserved at this point across the country. So I look at it as how do you work together? And I think the most important thing that I've learned over a few years in cannabis is like it or dislike it, the regulatory environment is different, town by town, county by county, state by state. And those are the partnerships you need to forge if you do it. And fast forwarding past what Kyle said is you got to open, you're running, you have to protect that license and you have to operate within the guidelines of what they're telling you have to operate in. And that is changing your standard operating procedure a million times internally in a single company. That said, those partnerships are so critical because those become the people that end up you becoming a trusted resource as new people start to come online. And if Kyle and I ever cross paths in the same town, why wouldn't we work together and learn from each other and grow the business together, right? Like, I still think that it's so undersaturated from consumer-based adopting cannabis as a new product, as well as underpenetrated across, especially significant states outside of California, I would say. There's so much lead time and leeway to get into these products. There's no competition. It's about partnerships with the regulatory bodies and environments. And we need to understand that as the operators. How do you protect your license? How do you become partners? And how do you help others come out of the ground?
And Chris, I really am California centric. I know you've got experience all over the country. I would tell you, just my crystal ball from everything I'm seeing, at least in California, massive consolidation is coming. So you're going to see some pretty big players come in and all of a sudden control 40, 50 stores. So if you're a mom and pop, I would say it's like you have Bob's Liquor Store and you've got 7-Eleven. It might make sense right now to go and approach 7-Eleven and say, how can I somehow partner with you? Maybe a stock in your company, stock in my company, especially the publicly traded, and get some of the expertise. If you say, look, I'm going to run the best Bob's Liquor Store, and I'm not trying to be crass with that, but I'm going to run the best Bob's Liquor Store, it's something I'm passionate about, then I would say, go for it. There's absolutely room for Bob's Liquor. They're all over the place. It's not just 7-Eleven, but it just depends on what the goal of the person is, what they're trying to accomplish, long-term and short-term.
Yeah, there's a story, Lulu, if I have a minute. I worked for Home Depot in the early years. And it was the exact same story. Big box home improvement coming in, and they were going to push out Bob's Liquor, the small mom and pop, right? Lots of studies were done internally because that was never the intent. What ended up happening was the Bob's Liquor or the small mom and pop that was not run well failed. And it was probably going to fail anyway. The Bob's Liquor of the world, who has incredible service, incredible loyalty with their customer base, and can modify to do things that the big non-nimble companies can't do, is unbelievably intelligent and will actually make them grow. So we watched this over the time, and again, this was 100 years ago at Home Depot, but the true value, I think, at the time was the one that pivoted, brought in housewares and modified a little bit softer and did a little bit more of general store rather than just hard nuts and bolts and tried to compete on lumber and nail prices. But I think the same thing is true here. This is not push. There's going to be consolidation. Somebody is going to come out and be the Starbucks or be the biggest in the world. That said, there's still going to be plenty of room for service journey, relationships, and assortment. It's going to happen. I guarantee you it's going to happen. It's happened in all the other retailers in the world. There's going to be 3 or 4 big ones, and then there's going to be micro markets where people can dive in underneath and have a very, very strong business with sound principles and business acumen.
These are great insights. What do you think is going to be happening in the next wave of cannabis? Things have been changing through COVID. When we come out of COVID, like, what are things that you're going to be seeing in cannabis?
I think legalization is coming, and I think it's coming this year. I'm hoping with that that they'll also be releasing a lot of people and expunging their records. On the business side of it, I think the economy has taken a massive hit, and we've been named an essential business in many, many states. So I think the paradigm shift is happening much faster than we'd expect. So I would expect that the maturity of this industry will be happening much faster than perhaps people anticipated.
Yep, I could not agree more. I believe the legalization could help small business because they'll have access to small business loans and federally funded loans that can help drive the lower end startup for this industry. That's first and foremost. Secondly, I think while we were named essential or deemed essential during this, I think it fast forwarded cannabis from an online or a digital perspective, where we had to fast forward the industry, which was lagging behind woefully. Obviously, you still can't complete commerce online. There's still that hiccup. I mean, how great is it going to be when you can just finish your transaction online? However, I say that with especially an East Coast bias of so many, and I said it before, so many new customers that have yet to step into cannabis or have left cannabis 35, 45 years ago in their college experimental days and are going to jump back in. I think there is so much growth in cannabis that we're going to need to continue to educate. So I think the in-store experience is coming back, and it's going to come back in a meaningful way. I think it is coupled with the digital experience. It'll fast forward, but there are still so many new consumers that are kind of coming into cannabis. They need education. They need advice. They want to know what works for them and get some of the tribal knowledge that now is formulated into a training program for our teams. And again, that's where mom and pop can win, big organizations can win. It's relaying that information and being a resource to, I believe, a huge tidal wave of people that are going to come to cannabis as it becomes more and more legal in every state.
Thank you, gentlemen. One last question. We're at time, but one last question, a little bit provocative. West Coast versus East Coast. Who do you think is going to have the bigger market, California or New York?
You know, great music comes out of both. So I would say it's not going to be a binary, you know, who's wins, who loses. What I would tell you is California probably has the most discerning consumer in cannabis, just because the culture of cannabis in California is sort of linked. That said, it's not that New York is a stranger to cannabis either, but you know, if you go to New York, and when I do, and I check out, you know, a little bodega and see what's for sale, the highest priced on the illicit market is what's listed as California cannabis. So I would say a lot of the brands, if commerce, interstate commerce happens, I think a lot comes out of California. But you know, the idea that New York's not going to, you know, have brands and trends coming out of New York and Miami and some of the other, you know, really good cities. But for sure, East Coast is going to have you know, a big influence on it, and California.
So this is the new version of the Biggie Tupac question, which I said to you yesterday.
Yeah.
I don't want to get shot, Chris. Okay.
Listen, as a native New Yorker originally, I'm in New Jersey now. I mean, it's Biggie all day. I'm sorry. That said, I see the question a little bit differently. Being in retail my whole life, running North America in many of the jobs, it's New York, Chicago, LA, or LA, Chicago, New York, right? That's the epicenters of the United States. That's where trend starts. And I think I said this to you yesterday, Lulu. There's a culture to cannabis, right? And that culture shows up differently if you go to the cannabis culture in Hawaii, it's very different than Seattle, which is going to be very different than Brooklyn, New York, right? Those cultures can be sports, music, fashion, entertainment. It's where they all come together. So it's going to show up differently in everyone. And I think they're all going to offer something a little bit differently. But I think at the end of the day, the landscape is going to be the big cities are going to win. Atlanta's going to pop up. Miami's going to pop up. But the catalyst is going to probably be the three big trade markets, which would be New York, LA, and Chicago in the middle.
And as a quick follow-up, when you talk about California, the consumers here are so like discerning. There hasn't really been a celebrity brand that's taken off, because the consumers here are like, I want something real. I don't want Snoop Dogg to put his name on it. I want to see him actually engaging with that plant. And to win in California, if you're a celebrity, you better engage why this is good, because people want good cannabis, not that person's cannabis.
Yeah, we're just having this conversation about celebrity brands. So thank you for your input. I'm going to say Kyle Kazan thinks the same way as I do. Thank you both gentlemen for your time. I'm really honored to have had this time to talk with both of you. So I'm going to sign off, and everyone have a beautiful rest of your conference.
Thanks, Lulu.
Take care.
Nice to meet you, Chris. Take care, everybody.